If you've ever dealt with anxiety, I bet you've heard this a million times. Just be positive. Look on the bright side. But what if that advice just makes you feel worse? What if that worry you feel could actually be your secret weapon? We're going to dig into a really surprising strategy that flips all that common advice right on its head.
You know the feeling, right? Someone tells you to just be positive, and it feels so dismissive. It's kind of like being told not to think about a purple giraffe. What's the first thing you do? You think about a purple giraffe. That advice doesn't just ignore your anxiety. It can make you feel guilty for not being able to just cheer up on command.
And the truth is, for a whole lot of people, positive thinking just isn't the answer. But the good news? There is another way, a research-backed alternative that lets you work with your anxiety instead of constantly fighting against it.
I know. The power of negative thinking sounds totally backward, right? But what if we could look at it differently? What if that negative thinking wasn't a weakness at all, but a really powerful tool you could use for motivation and even success? Okay, so here's what it's called: defensive pessimism. It was first identified way back in 1986 by a couple of psychologists, Julie Norham and Nancy Cantor, and it's a specific cognitive strategy. You basically start by setting low expectations for something coming up. You let yourself think about what could go wrong, and then you harness all that nervous energy and turn it into motivation to prepare.
Dr. Norem's explanation here is absolutely key. This is not just about being a downer. It's a very specific, two-step process. First, you lower the bar for your expectations. Then, and this is the part that makes all the difference, you do a deep dive, a detailed mental walkthrough of all the potential problems. That second step is what transforms worry into a kind of superpower.
So how does this all work in the real world? How do you actually take that buzzing, anxious energy and turn it into a solid, practical plan? Let's break it down.
It really comes down to three main steps. Step 1, set low expectations. So instead of thinking, this pitch is going to be a home run, you think, okay, the client might be in a bad mood and hate my idea. Step 2, mentally rehearse. You actually visualize specific things going wrong. The projector dies, you blank on a key statistic. And that leads to step 3, you over-prepare. That anxiety becomes your fuel. You bring extra cables, you make backup note cards, you practice your pitch until you can do it in your sleep. You've prepared for every failure, which, ironically, makes you way more likely to succeed.
Now, it's worth pointing out, this isn't the only way to get things done. There's another strategy, kind of the polar opposite, called strategic optimism. You probably know these people. They're the ones who seem totally chill before a big event. They expect things to go well, they do some light planning, but they aren't really driven by anxiety. They just have a feeling it's all going to work out.
And what's so important to understand is that neither way is right or wrong. Both the defensive pessimist and the strategic optimist can get amazing results. It's all about knowing how your own brain is wired and using the strategy that actually works for you.
So who are these people? Who's actually out there using this strategy? Well, the answer might surprise you. It's often the people you'd least expect.
I mean, think about that A student who, even with a 4.0, is absolutely convinced they're going to fail the next final, so they study like crazy. Or that top executive who walks into a big pitch having already thought through every possible question and worst-case scenario. There's even a fascinating story about a man named Graham who used this to overcome a gambling addiction. He'd force himself to focus on the awful, guilty feelings after a loss instead of the thrill he felt during it.
And this isn't just based on stories either. There's real data. One big study looked at over 1,000 university students to see how their motivation and self-esteem played into all of this.
And the results were pretty fascinating. They found 4 different types of students. Now, one group made sense. They had low self-esteem and used defensive pessimism a lot. But, and here's the twist, another group had high self-esteem and also used it all the time. The theory? For them, it's like a shield. It helps protect their high but maybe kind of fragile self-image when they're facing a tough challenge.
This brings us to what might be the single most important point to understand. It's so easy to hear the word pessimism and just assume it's a negative part of someone's personality. But that's not what this is at all.
Okay, so let's get this straight. General pessimism, that's a worldview. That's believing bad things are just going to happen and there's nothing you can do about it. It leads to giving up. Defensive pessimism, on the other hand, is a temporary strategy. It's the belief that bad things might happen, so you'd better work your butt off to stop them. See the difference? One paralyzes you, the other one gets you moving.
And that is the key takeaway. This is something you do. It's not who you are.
It's a tool you pull out of the toolbox when you need it, before a big test, a public speech, you name it. It doesn't define you. That A student who worries endlessly about exams could be the most optimistic person you know when it comes to everything else in our life.
So, when you put it all together, what does it mean? It means you have an opportunity to completely reframe your entire relationship with your own anxiety.
And this is precisely why that well-meaning advice to just be positive can be so damaging. The original research by Norum and Cantor actually found that when you try to cheer up a defensive pessimist, when you stop them from doing that worst-case scenario thinking, their performance gets worse. You are literally taking away their most effective tool.
So instead of fighting your anxiety or feeling ashamed of it, maybe it's time to start listening to it. Think of it as a signal from your brain telling you, hey, pay attention, time to prepare. You can actually channel it and transform that nervous energy into incredible focus, motivation, and preparation. So, I'll just leave you with this one thought to chew on. For your whole life, maybe you've been told your anxiety is a problem, a bug that needs to be fixed. But what if it isn't a flaw? What if it's actually a feature? What if it's the engine that's been powering your greatest successes all along?